welcome. Come on in to Transforming Obstacles into Opportunities. We'll give everyone just a couple minutes to get into the room. Hello, Melissa. Hello, Vertesia. Welcome. Hi, Tashawn. Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that, Melissa. I am too. I've been really looking forward to this session. I am. Thank you, Melissa. Doing very well tonight. Hi, Dr. Poole. I believe I have promoted you to a moderator.
Hold on a second. Let me get my camera turned on here. There we go.
All right. A couple more people coming in. Welcome, Belinda. Welcome, Trevor. Get underway here in just a moment. Let's see. Sure.
I see some familiar faces. Good evening.
I'm going to put a link for our attendance sign-in here. Don't get credit or anything, but it helps us to know who's coming, what you're hoping to get out of the session. Good evening, Trevor.
Dr. Lynn Scott, are you going to advance the slides?
Yes, I will. You
Okay.
can just give me a cue if I don't catch up on when to.
Okay.
when to
Sounds good. Forward. Sounds good.
All right.
Hello,
All
Melissa.
Right. Looks like I've got about 7:03, so let's go ahead and get underway. This webinar is being recorded, so if you'd like to access the recording after the event, it'll be shared on the Purdue Global Student Webinar calendar. There'll also be a takeaway at the end of the webinar that includes any links shared during the webinar, as well as a copy of the slide content. So welcome to tonight's webinar, Transforming Obstacles into Opportunities, Moving Forward Toward Your Goals. Tonight's the final session of our 4-part mental health awareness webinar series, and we're delighted that you've joined us. If you've missed any of the previous sessions in the series, be sure to check out the recordings posted on the student webinar calendar. I'll put a link for that in the chat now. We don't want to lose you in this webinar, but save that link in case you need it later, and I'll try to remember to share it again at the end as well. So our presenter tonight is Dr. Julie Poole, a full-time professor in the Graduate Psychology Department. We are honored that Dr. Poole has volunteered to share her time, energy, and her expertise with us tonight. So without any further ado, I'll turn it over to her now.
Well, thank you so much, and I am very happy to be here tonight. Look forward to sharing with you. This is a topic that has been of interest to me since my mental health practice days, and some of the activities are back in those days. So I've been out of practice now almost 10 years. So I'm going to share some with you tonight. The goal is to look at whenever you're at a point in your life where you're kind of really just struggling. Maybe you're stuck, you just can't move forward. How do you get past those times? We all face them. I just recently, my house took a direct hit off of Hurricane Sally. I shouldn't say just recently, about a year and a half ago. It was my first hurricane experience, which I lived through in my home. And it was quite the challenge, let me tell you. And there were times where I found myself being on just kind of a whiny mode, and I had to pick myself up and move forward. So that's part of what I want to share with you tonight. You can go ahead and flip the slide. If you have pencil and paper or pen and paper close by, I would encourage you just to grab it. We're going to do some things tonight that you might want to write down as you look at some of the activities that we're going to work through. So here are our learning outcomes for this evening. We're going to explore the definition of obstacle as well as opportunity. We're going to discover the importance of setting priorities. We're going to define a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. And finally, we're going to learn how to transform that obstacle into an opportunity. So all of this came about from an article that I wrote a few years back about the women in my life and who I had read about who had encountered great obstacles in their lives. And so a lot of what I'm going to be sharing with you tonight are things that came out of that article and what I used in mental health treatment. So whenever I'm tackling a topic like this, I always head back to the dictionary to make sure that I'm understanding these words that I've lived with all my life. But maybe I'm not really fully aware of what it means. So this is the definition of obstacles. It is a thing that blocks one's way or prevents or hinders progress. So as you can see there, the slide, there is a bit of a hindrance there in the picture that we wouldn't want to encounter in our lives. So be thinking about this, and you can go ahead and jot it on the paper. There's nothing that you have to share tonight. If you want to share, you certainly are welcome to, but don't feel like you have to put in your thoughts and reflections, because this is really about you and your time. So think about, what are the obstacles in your life? Yes, Melissa, that hurricane was a huge obstacle because my house was pretty much destroyed. I didn't have a roof. I had to find people in the middle of everybody else having their houses damaged as well, trying to find people to work on it. And it did create a lot of anxiety and a lot of stressors that I typically didn't encounter and had never lived through before because I was new to this area. What prevents or hinders your progress toward accomplishing your goals? And so those are the couple of things I want you to be thinking about. What are some of the obstacles in your life? And then what's preventing you or hindering you from moving forward, taking those steps forward, even if they're just small steps? What's keeping you from being able to accomplish your goals? So I want to go ahead and flip that slide. There we go. Thank you. So I want to tell you a fable tonight. It's probably been a very long time since somebody told you a story, and I don't think we're ever too old to hear a story. A fable or a parable is a short story that illustrates a moral, and they're to teach us life lessons. So just sit back and enjoy this very short fable and see if you can find the life lesson. So in ancient times, a king had a boulder that he placed on a roadway. Then he hid himself and watched to see if anyone would remove this huge rock from the roadway. Some of the king's wealthiest merchants came by, and they simply walked around it. Many loudly blamed the king for not keeping the roads clear, but none did anything about getting the big stone out of the roadway. Then a young servant girl came along, carrying a load of vegetables. On approaching the boulder, the servant girl laid down her burden and tried to move the stone to the side of the road. After much pushing and straining, she finally was successful. As the servant girl picked up her load of vegetables, she noticed that there was a purse lying in the road where the boulder had been. The purse contained many gold coins and a note from the king, indicating that the gold was for the person who removed the boulder from the roadway. And the next slide. So the point of this, the moral point of this fable, is that the servant girl really did learn a very valuable lesson. And I suspect if others who had walked around the boulder and didn't attempt to get it out of the roadway, if they had been there and observed this, they would have learned a valuable lesson as well. Every obstacle can be transformed into an opportunity. That big boulder was the obstacle, and she, by the grace of the king, transformed that into a purse of gold, into an opportunity. And then the point of the fable, the moral of the fable, is that a purse of gold is a life of inner peace and happiness. And we just have to struggle through those challenges and push and strain and move that obstacle out of our way in order to move forward toward our goals and our opportunities. Next slide. So I want to talk a bit about Stoicism. Stoicism, when we think about the Stoics, who were a group of people, and many people still practice Stoicism, the Stoics elaborated on a detailed taxonomy of virtue, and they divided virtue into four main types, that being wisdom, justice, courage, and moderation. So nearly 2,000 years ago, the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius wrote in his meditations, and so in his book, this quote. And the quote is, "This reflects a fundamental tenet." I'm sorry, let me go back and read the quote. "Our actions may be impeded, but there can be no impeding our intentions or our dispositions, because we can accommodate and adapt the obstacles to our acting. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes a way." And so this quote really reflects a fundamental tenet of Stoicism, which is a popular philosophy amongst educated Romans of that time. And they believed that external obstacles are not bad in and of themselves. And in many cases, they can be transformed into advantages. So when we're facing an obstacle or a disadvantage, we have to consider how you're going to channel your emotions, your thoughts, your behaviors, and bring about the obstacle in a way that you will be able to overcome it or to move beyond it. We must treat obstacles as a catalyst of growth. Many times we can be faced with an obstacle or a challenge in our lives, and we just kind of sit with it and we ruminate over it and we complain about it. And I always loved the quote that says, "Are we looking for blame or are we looking for solutions?" And so that's a very Stoic type of response. So we have to treat obstacles as this catalyst to growth and as a means of forcing you to grow personally, to grow academically, to grow professionally, and to become a better person. And it's kind of like if you're working to build your body and your muscles, and you're going to the gym and you're working your muscles and lifting weights and doing exercises. You are subjecting your muscles to stress and to tension. Well, it's the same way. We have to face obstacles. We have to work to overcome them. We have to subject ourselves to some stress and some tension as we work through those. But the more that we do that, the better we will be at being able to overcome these obstacles. So really developing a focused mind in the Stoic method of living with virtue and focusing on what we can control is a very important philosophy to adopt. And if you want to develop a kind of Stoic to-do list, it's really just a very simple concept. And that is we need to focus on what we can control, and we want to develop mindfulness and helping us achieve whatever goals we set for ourselves. And that is a very important part of what we're going to do tonight. And I hope that you'll embrace as you move forward after this presentation. So next slide. or cat. Here's another word I wanted to define tonight because it's actually stuck is the word, and stuck is not in all dictionaries. And I thought that was very interesting. It's because it's the past tense of stick, and stick is very different from stuck. And stuck is that defined as being trapped and unable to move. And I think when we're faced with an obstacle, we may feel very paralyzed in the moment, not knowing how to handle it, and just really being frozen and not be able to move forward. And so that's one of the things that I want to work with you tonight on is how do we move forward when we're faced with an obstacle. Next slide. All right, so I'm going to age myself a bit. Back maybe 10 years ago or a little bit older, we had a television show that was called Clean House. I don't know if any of you all ever saw Clean House, but it's kind of like Hoarders is today, if you can liken it like that. So Clean House, basically the homeowners would seek out the Clean House crew to come to help them to get rid of this history of this accumulation of all of this stuff that clutters up their homes. So I want us to think about that. And I always liked that show because I like the way they did things. They would put out 3 tarps on the ground, and on one tarp they would say, what is it I want you to put on this tarp? Everything that you want to get rid of. So they would have one tarp for the get rid of it. We're either going to donate it, we're going to haul it to the dump, we're going to do something with it. And then on the second tarp, they would ask you to put things down on this tarp that you're not quite ready to get rid of, but maybe we can store it away for a period of time until you make your decision on what you want to do with it. So that was the second tarp. The third tarp, they would say, what is it that you absolutely must keep? And on that tarp, they kept the things that they wanted to incorporate back into their home and into their lives. So that's kind of the premise of the show. And I think that we can liken that to our lives. Oftentimes we are stuck due to an accumulation of stuff that keeps us from moving forward in life. That may be physical stuff, but a lot of times it is something mental or is a part of our history. It may be a relationship, but oftentimes we get stuck and we become very indecisive as to how we're going to struggle. And we beyond being indecisive, we just really struggle. What are we going to do about this? How are we going to deal with this baggage that we have in our life, and whether that's physical, mental, relationship, whatever that might be. So in order to move forward toward your goals and your ambitions, we oftentimes are required to pack up stuff. So packing means processing past events. Maybe something happened in your past that you've just put away and you've never really dealt with it, or you never had closure about it. So it may be processing those types of events. It may be evaluating your thinking patterns. So do you have negative thinking patterns as an example? And then also examining your current habits, your current thoughts, and your current behaviors that are keeping you stuck. So with your pen and pencil, just draw you 3 squares on that piece of paper. And after tonight's seminar, think about that. Think about what stuff in the very first square you're going to put all the stuff that you need to get rid of in your life. It's not helping you. It's not healthy for you. It's something that's taking up space where something more important could be. So that's your first square. Your second square, you're going to, what is it that you could take off to storage and put in storage or put in your garage for now, and then be able to come back to it at a later date. And let me give you an example of what I mean by that. So one of the things that when I was in my doctoral program, I was working full time, balancing family life and in school full time. And I became very resentful because I was missing out on a lot of things in life. Like I was having to study and do schoolwork instead of being able to go to a picnic with friends or to go shopping with my sister or whatever it was in life. And so, and I've told my students, I have a few students here tonight that I've had in classes, I made a bucket list. So I put in storage my bucket list of all the things that I was missing out on that I wanted to do once I got my degree. And then when I got my degree, I pulled my bucket list out of storage and began working on that bucket list to do things that I had missed out on. So that's something you might want to store away. And then what is it you want to carry forth with you as you continue this journey that you're on right now? So that's your third square. So saying all of this, for issues that keep you from moving forward, you can mark those issues and you're going to take them to the dump. You're going to deal with them and you're going to pack them away and take them, donate them, take them to the dump, get rid of it, because it's taking up too much energy of your brain power and your mental well-being and potentially your physical well-being as well. So you're going to do that and then decide what it is that you're going to put in storage for now and come back to it and deal with it later in life. And then what stuff are you going to carry forward with you? And so in examining our stuff, we may find that we need a bigger storage unit. You may find that there's some things that need to go to the dump, but you need to deal with them first before you can go to the dump with them. And it may, you may find that you're also very grateful for what it is that you've decided to take forward with you in your journey. So recognize that, and just finally, in taking these steps, they're going to help you to clear out some of the obstacles that are in your way right now, or at a future point, and begin to work toward changing those to transforming those to opportunities. So that's an exercise that you can do for that. Let's see what Melissa's saying. For instance, this would be compared to setting our important priorities first and put the rest aside. Yeah, absolutely. You know, we can't put our family or our children in storage, can we? They are an important part of our life. They're going to go forward with us in our journey. But there are some things, like maybe there's a relationship in your life. Let's say it's a girlfriend or a boyfriend that just is not a very healthy relationship. And it's taking up a lot of your time and brain space and energy. You may have to decide what's the best way to handle that relationship. Is there too much drama in it? So none of us, nobody here tonight has that time to deal with drama in their lives. It's too much of a waste of your energies. This next little exercise I want to do with you is called your jar of life. And I think I am a very visual person, and I like to visualize things in different ways, and it helps us then to be able to picture really the important things in life. So this is your jar of life. One of my favorite things in the world is a good old mason jar. So that is your jar of life. Next slide. So I want you to envision that we're all in a classroom, a ground classroom where we're face to face. And one day in a classroom, the students file into the classroom and they notice that their professor has several things sitting on his or her desk. There's an old mason jar. There's a container of golf balls, and then there's these two opaque bags sitting there. So the professor stood in front of the desk and looking out at the students and just being very silent in the moment. Every so often, he would take a sip of his coffee out of his coffee mug. And this went on for several minutes, and the students started to kind of giggle and whisper among themselves and wonder what was going on. And so finally, a student stepped up and said, Professor, what's going on? Why are you standing there looking at us drinking your coffee? Next slide. So the professor sat down his coffee mug, and he took his ball jar and he grabbed a few golf balls and he dropped them into the jar one by one until they nearly reached the top. And the professor said to his students, "Would you say that this jar is full?" And the students replied, "Yes, it's full of golf balls." Next slide. And so then the professor picked up one of the opaque bags that he had that was full of pebbles. And he began to pour pebbles into the jar with the golf balls. And every now and then he would shake the jar, and the pebbles would fit into the spaces around the golf balls. And when he had the pebbles full to the top, he said, "Now, would you say this jar is full?" And several of the students laughed and they said, "Yes, now it is full." Next slide. And then the professor picked up his other bag. His other bag was a bag of sand. And he poured the contents of the sand from the bag into the jar, once again shaking it up a little so that the grains of sand would find their way into the remaining gaps. He filled the jar to the brim. And the professor said, "And now is this jar full?" And the students laughed and they said, "Now it's really full." The students agreed it is full to the top. And the professor said, "I'd say it's packed." Next slide. And then the professor picks up his cup of coffee and took another sip. And he leaned back against his desk and he's staring at this full jar, seeming to contemplate its contents. Then he stood up and he began to pour his coffee into the jar. He emptied his entire mug of coffee, and this time, truly and completely filling the jar. Next slide. So just think about that. The professor says to the students, "I want you to recognize that this jar represents your life." And all the students kind of perked up and looked at him. And he said, "As you look at this jar, the golf balls represent the important things in your life. Your family, your friends, your health, your passion, your purpose, and for all of you, your educational journey. If you lost everything else and had these things alone, your life would still be full. You still have your family, your friends, your health, your passion, your purpose, your educational journey. The pebbles represent things that matter to you, like your home and your job. Now the sand represents everything else. It's the small stuff. It's the stuff that takes away from your life." Next slide. So then the professor pulled out another jar, an empty jar. And he took the bag of sand and he poured sand into the empty jar until it was all the way to the top, filled to the top with sand. And then he attempted to place a few golf balls into the jar. One barely made it, resting just on top while the others fell out, completely dropping onto the desk. And the professor said, if you fill your jar with sand first, there isn't any room for golf balls or pebbles. Likewise, if you spend all your time and your energy on the little things, there won't be any room left for what is important to you. So pay attention to the things that bring you real happiness and fulfillment. Play with your children. Take care of your health. Take your partner out to dinner. Get outside and into the world. There will always be time to clean your house, check your phone, or fix your garbage disposal. You've got to set your priorities. Take care of the golf balls first. Those are the things that truly matter. The rest is just sand. So the classroom was quiet for a few minutes, and then one woman raised her hand. And she said, but the coffee, what does the coffee do? He said, the coffee is pretty simple. No matter how packed your life seems to be, remember that there always is room for a cup of coffee with a friend. The essential message of this story is our need to make room for which is really valuable in our lives, and our need to remove the things that leave us feeling empty. One way we will do this is by asking some questions of ourselves. And these are questions that you want to write down and answer at some point. And then you want to do some contemplating and reflecting on those questions, because you may not have all the answers ready at this moment. So I want you to think about, what are the golf balls in your life? Remember, those are the most important, valuable things in your life that you would not want to live without. Are there any that have fallen out of the jar, or perhaps barely holding on? What are some of the examples of the grains of sand that you are pouring into your life before the golf balls? Which of these could you eliminate to make room for the more substantial stuff? And how would you go about doing that? And the quote there that's on the slide says, things which matter most must never be at the mercy of the things which matter least. And that is a quote from a German poet by the name of Joseph Wolfgang von Goethe. So here are the questions that you want to ask yourself. What do the golf balls symbolize in your life? What's most important? What is it that you're making a golf ball that's really shouldn't be a golf ball? It may be a pebble, or it may be sand. What do the pebbles symbolize in your life? What are things that matter in your life? And then what does the sand symbolize in your life? What are the small things in life that really do not matter? And what does the coffee symbolize in your life? If you're not a coffee drinker, a tea or a soda or a smoothie. So the purpose of this activity is really to put things in perspective. Sometimes when we're faced with challenges and obstacles, it is as if the world is truly ending, when it really is not. It's sand. It's really not. So if it's Tuesday night and you're still struggling to get through an assignment that's due by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, it's not the end of the world. It's not the end of the world. If you're late, hopefully you'll have an instructor who's very compassionate with you. If not, you're going to lose 10%. It's not the end of the world. And so being able to put into perspective those challenges in life. Next slide. So now I want us to move forward and talk about how do we transform these obstacles into opportunities. So now that you understand the jar of life and the importance on focusing on the things that matter, and the order in which you need to be filling your jar up, you really must realize that life is going to throw you challenges and obstacles. It's just going to happen. That we are on a roller coaster. We're all on the same ride. Some of us have more downs than ups. It's okay. It's a part of what we face in life. In recognizing this, it's really important to develop some skills that are going to help you in transforming these obstacles into opportunities. So while we might not be able to control things that are difficult, we can control how we use our minds and our thoughts and how we act upon these challenges and work through these difficult circumstances. So what are some things we can do? Well, let's explore that together. And in order to really successfully transform obstacles into opportunities, it requires some change. You have to do some reflection, and you have to make some thought changes and some behavior changes. Next slide. All right, here's another word I wanted to define because I wanted to make sure I understood opportunity. So opportunity is a set of circumstances that makes it possible to do something. An opportunity is a good chance for advancement or progress. And isn't that what we all want? We want to take steps forward and continue that forward movement. Go ahead and click the slide. Thank you. So we have several options that we can do when we're faced with an opportunity, or I'm sorry, an obstacle. All right, so let's see what we could do. We could ignore it and pretend it's not there. So maybe close our eyes or put a blanket over our head. That is called denial. For the most part, it will still be there, and it's not gone away. It's kind of fantasy thinking. If you think you can ignore and pretend something's not there and they go away. Very, very childlike thinking. That's what our children do in their pretend. Okay, so that's one thing we could do with an obstacle. We could turn around and walk away from the obstacle. That's a possibility. That is called avoidance. It's not a very helpful technique either. Or here's one that you might recognize. We could just say, not ready to deal with it, and I'm just going to wait for some time to pass, or I'm going to wait for a perfect time to deal with it. That, my friends, is called procrastination. And that also is not an effective way to deal with obstacles. Or we can address it, and we can confront it, and we can figure out what to do about it, and we can persevere. So those things that I've shared with you is all about perspective. And there's a saying that says the difference between a good day and a bad day is one simple thing, and that is perspective, how we look upon it. If you wake up and you stub your toe getting out of bed and you say, oh, it's going to be a bad day, you've already set the mindset that it's probably going to be a bad day. Obstacles are rarely created spontaneously unless it's a hurricane. And sometimes they can be very subtle, but most often they're easily observed if only we pay attention and we look. For example, if you do not look at what needs to be done for your week's schoolwork until Tuesday, you're going to have a challenge in front of you, right? And so that is not a successful technique. It's much better to start on Wednesday prior to the Tuesday deadline and work throughout the week. We tend to wait until these obstacles fester long enough to feel like they truly are insurmountable. So practicing our art of managed perspective allows us to notice things that we would otherwise ignore, whether that's deliberate or not. So when there is an obstacle in our path, perspective again helps us in profound ways. And every obstacle creates a space to learn. And that's something I really want you to take with you tonight, is that everything we do in life is about learning and growing. And so obstacles, oftentimes we learn our best in dealing with obstacles. So every obstacle creates a space to learn. Where there is knowledge to be gained, there is an opportunity to seize. So this technique requires two fundamental concepts and beliefs. One is that perspective is malleable. So that means that you can change the way you see things, and you think about things, and you feel about things, and you behave about things and act on things. And obstacles can be transformed. And with most things of importance, it starts with this moment of contemplation, a pen, a paper, and taking a deep breath and being ready to step forward. Next slide. So I want to talk about growth mindset versus fixed mindset. This is not a new concept. Dr. Carol Dweck has, and in fact, I'm going to share a link you all. This is a TED Talk with thank you, Melissa, with Dr. Carol Dweck. And she's the one that introduced us to the fixed versus growth mindset. So the view that you adopt for yourself profoundly affects the way you lead your life. So if you think I'm a failure, I'm no good at anything, I'm always making mistakes, I just can't do anything right, if that's the mindset you carry with you, that is what you believe, and what you believe is how you think, how you feel, and how you act. And so you have to change that mindset. Your mindset can determine whether you become a person you want to be, and whether or not you're going to be able to accomplish the things that you value. So Dweck's research shows how our minds can be fixed and unable to see solutions for obstacles, or our minds can be in this growth mindset where we're capable for looking for opportunities. So a fixed mindset, you work under the belief that your qualities, your abilities, your skills, your intelligence, these are all carved in stone. You're born with them, and there's no chance to grow them, to expand them, or make any changes to them. And a fixed mindset is highly resistant to change. And it's really a self-perpetuating problem that can really hold people back from achieving their full potential in any area of their life. So this belief, the fixed belief, stops the mind from looking for solutions, because your belief is things are what they are, and there's no changing them. So on the other hand, we have the growth mindset, and this is the mindset that we all want to adopt. In the growth mindset, you were dealt a hand. You were born the way you were born. You've had life experiences. This is what you have been dealt, but you don't believe it's carved in stone. You have the ability to control and to take and shape and change and grow your skills, your abilities, your qualities, your intelligence, and so on. So when you choose to believe that the core of who you are has plasticity, so that it's flexible and you're able to mold it and grow it, you can grow, you can develop, and you can expand on how you view yourself as well as the world around you. Whereas that rigid, fixed belief, that is, things are always just going to be this way. I'm always going to struggle. I'm never going to get it right. And that just closes you down from being able to see past obstacles. And I think that one of the things that we have to do is we have to slow down. We have to reflect. We have to contemplate, and we have to think critically and creative to get ourselves out of being stuck or in being in the box, if you will. So the next slide, I'm going to just kind of do a comparison here of fixed versus growth mindset. So on the fixed side, these are about beliefs and values. So the fixed mindset is that skills, intelligence, talents are natural and fixed. There's nothing you can do to grow it or to change it. Fixed mindset, people believe that failure is shameful and should be avoided. Also under the fixed mindset, some people are naturally good at others while others are not, and there's nothing you can do to build those skills. And the fixed mindset believes I am not in control of my abilities. On the other side, the growth mindset, I have the capacity to learn and to grow my skills. Mistakes are learning opportunities. Failure is a valuable lesson. We should grow from every failure that we have. We need to be able to grow from those. I am capable of building and developing my abilities and skills. And finally, I am in control of my abilities and skills. And on the next slide, we're going to talk about a few things. We're going to talk about efforts, and we're going to talk about feedback. So if we look at it from the fixed mindset, when we look at efforts, efforts are not necessary or useful. To put forth effort is not needed because we can't make any change if we have a fixed mindset. Efforts are seen as a negative thing and something I do when I'm just not good at whatever task it is that I'm trying to do. From the growth mindset, efforts are focused on the process of getting better. And I want to point out a word there, process. So you are not immediately perfect at anything you do. It's a process, it's a journey, and we have to be okay with that journey. And doing and working through that journey, then we are able to get better at whatever skill it is that we're trying to get and achieve. Feedback from a fixed mindset, people that get feedback with fixed mindset oftentimes get defensive and they take that feedback personally and they ignore useful criticism and feedback. Nobody loves to be criticized, but constructive criticism is a way that we grow. And from the growth mindset, as we look at feedback, we appreciate feedback and we use it to improve upon it. And we actually seek it out. We seek out feedback from others so that we can learn and grow. And we learn from the criticism piece. All right, next slide, we're going to talk about a few other things that we look at from a fixed versus growth mindset. The first is challenges. And these are these obstacles we've been talking about for the last 40 some minutes. So challenges from a fixed mindset, we back down from them and we avoid them like the plague. We avoid them, we deny them, we procrastinate about them, we don't do them. Where the growth mindset, we embrace challenges and we persevere. We seek out new challenges. And so that's a different mindset. And some of the ways that we perceive mistakes are different as well. So fixed mindset, mistakes, you feel very discouraged when making mistakes and you avoid making them. Well, from a growth mindset, mistakes are learning opportunities and ways to improve. And I think that's something we really not only have to instill in ourselves, but instill in our children. Some children just think mistakes are the end of the world. And they're not. They're growing opportunities, learning opportunities. And then the final quality is success of others. So when you have a fixed mindset, you feel threatened by the success of others. When you have a growth mindset, you find inspiration through the success of others and you celebrate others' success. And that's a real telling point about whether or not you are embracing a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. So what can we do? What can we do to be able to, what can we do to be able to embrace that growth mindset? You can go ahead and flip that slide. Thank you. Absolutely, fair. You can have both. And I think it's normal. It's normal human qualities to have both. But what we want to do is begin, remember, if we go from a growth mindset, we are going to take on these challenges and call ourselves on it when we are embracing a fixed mindset. And so this slide tells you some ways that you can do that. So you can reflect. I've said it many times tonight. You want to take time to acknowledge, reflect, and embrace all of your failures as well as all of your successes. So celebrate and work through the things that are more challenging. Find your purpose. I'll give you another TED Talk link here. This is a young adult. Charlotte Barber has a TED Talk that's just exceptional. And it is entitled Living with a Growth Mindset. And one of the things that she talks about is finding your purpose. What is your meaning in life? Is it to be a great mom or dad? Or is it that you want to be a professional in the field that you've chosen? Whatever that might be, find your purpose. Let's see, I'm reading Melissa's comment. Do you think when someone goes through a lot of difficulties or hardships in life, it makes their mindset grow? I think that it's how we address those challenges. And it is, I saw you put forth earlier, glass half full, half empty. It's about perspective and how you view those challenges and tackle them. So taking on challenges, which is the next step. Learn well, not fast. Learn for the sake of learning. Don't learn for a grade. That grade is just a number. And I promise you that when you're going to be hired as an employee, they're going to be more interested in what you can share with your knowledge than what your transcript says. So learn well, not fast, and not for a grade. Ask for constructive feedback. You're getting feedback all the time from your instructors. Ask your boss, ask your husband or wife or your partner, give me some feedback. What am I doing well? What do I need to work on? I like this one, incorporate yet. And what I mean by that is I may not be there yet, but I'm working to get there. Remember, it's about the journey, not the destination. So it's the process that we must enjoy. Jot down your goals. I ask you all, grab paper and pencil. Did you know, and I'm talking paper and pencil, I'm not talking typing on a computer right now. Did you know that if you write your goals down on paper, no pen and paper, you are 75% more likely to achieve them? We have lost the art of writing down things. Get yourself a journal and start writing in it. Write whatever comes to mind. It doesn't have to be mind-blowing, but write down. The growth mindset people are aware that once a goal is down on paper, they are more likely to pursue it. The next one that I have here is thought stop, and this is a therapeutic technique. And so basically what it is, as Farrah was saying, can you have both the negative or the fixed and the growth mindsets? And yes, you can. But what I want you to start doing when you hear the negativity start coming up in your thoughts or maybe in your conversation with somebody, stop that thought. Immediately stop and replace it with a growth mindset perspective. That is how you begin to retrain your mind. We've already talked about failures and mistakes or learning opportunities. Think about practicing mindfulness. Mental and physical activities are a part of the growth mindset formula. So meditation, walking, stretching, doing yoga, all those things that help to bring clarity to your mind. One of the things that I love to do is I like to paint. So I do that. Painting is a way for me to get into the practice of mindfulness. And then, as I've said, appreciate the journey. Don't focus on the destination. Appreciate the journey that it took to get there. And that is when you begin to see the true beauty in the challenges that you are facing. And the next slide. Now, I ask you about having pen and paper. These are some things that you can do. It helps if you write down the obstacle. Sometimes simply writing it down, realizing, man, this is ridiculous. Why am I concerned about this? This is sand. This is not the space I want to be in. And you let it go. Yes, Kenneth, I painted that painting behind me. I actually had a stroke about 2 years ago. And as part of my recovery, they wanted me to do fine motor skills, which hand motor skills. And so that's one of my paintings. I don't know if you can see it or not. Yeah, and that stroke reminds me of my recovery. And that painting reminds me of my stroke recovery. All right, so write down the obstacle, develop a strategy, put it down on paper. What are you going to do to address it? Let's say you're having issues with a friend.